Earth's fierce counterattack leaves the Galactic Council. Speechless. The crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council fell into an uncomfortable silence as Ambassador Elsa Martinez stepped through the reinforced doorway, her military-issued boots clicking against the translucent floor with measured precision. The representatives of 47 different species turned their various optical organs toward the human delegation, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. "The Council recognizes the primitive species from Sol 3, announced Councillor Vexthara, his serpentine form coiled around the central speaking platform. His words dripped with condescension, as if he were addressing particularly dim children, rather than representatives of an entire civilization. Elsa's companion, Dr. Helen Chen, adjusted her tablet and whispered, "Remember the plan. Let them underestimate us." For 3 cycles, the Galactic Council had dismissed Earth's applications for membership. The human species, they declared, lacked the technological sophistication and peaceful temperament required for galactic citizenship. Their warfare, their competition, their relentless drive to overcome obstacles, these were seen as barbaric traits that had no place in civilized space. "We understand the Council's concerns about our species," Elsa began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber without amplification. "However, recent events have perhaps clarified our position in the galactic community." A ripple of what might have been laughter emanated from the Zephyrian delegation, their gas-based forms shimmering with amusement. The insectoid hive queen clicked her mandibles dismissively. "Recent events?" Vexathara's scaled head tilted. "You speak of the void swarm incursion in the outer rim. A tragedy, certainly, but hardly relevant to—" "Actually," Helen interrupted, standing and activating her holographic display, "it's entirely relevant." The chamber's lighting dimmed as a 3-dimensional tactical map materialized above the assembly. It showed the Kepler system. No, Helen caught herself. The outer rim territories where the void swarm had emerged 3 months ago. The council members leaned forward despite themselves. The void swarm had been their greatest nightmare made manifest, a horde of biomechanical entities that consumed entire star systems, converting matter into more of themselves. In 6 weeks, they had devastated 12 worlds and were advancing toward the council's core territories. The swarm had achieved a 97.3% conquest rate, Helen continued, manipulating the display to show the creature's relentless advance. "Your combined fleets managed to slow their progress but could not stop them. Evacuation protocols were initiated across 17 sectors." Murmurs of unease rippled through the assembly. They remembered the fear, the desperate scramble to relocate billions of beings from threatened worlds. "Then something unexpected occurred," Elsa said, taking control of the presentation. The hologram zoomed in on a single system, one that should have been consumed like all the others. Instead, it showed something that made several council members recoil in shock. The void swarm's advance had not just stopped, it had been reversed. Completely. "Impossible," breathed the crystalline representative from Quartz Prime. "Our analysis showed the swarm was unstoppable. They adapted to every weapon, every strategy." "Every conventional strategy," Helen corrected. "You see, the Council made the same mistake the swarm did. You assumed you understood human capabilities based on our visible technology." Elsa stepped forward, her expression growing harder. "You dismissed us because we fight wars, because we compete with each other, because we never learned to simply accept defeat and evacuate when faced with impossible odds." The hologram shifted, showing human ships. Not the sleek, elegant vessels of council member species, but angular, brutal-looking craft that seemed designed for one purpose: war. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, yet they had somehow shattered the void swarm's formation. "You want to know what happened?" Elsa's voice carried an edge that made several aliens unconsciously retreat. The swarm encountered something they had never faced before, a species that views impossible odds as a personal challenge. The tactical display began playing recorded footage from the battle. Human ships dove directly into swarm formations, ramming creatures 10 times their size. When their weapons failed to penetrate swarm armor, Human crews ejected their reactor cores and used them as improvised bombs. When those explosions weren't enough, entire ships performed suicide runs, their crews singing battle hymns as they died. Madness, whispered the ethereal collective's representative. Adaptation, Helen corrected. When conventional tactics failed, we developed new ones. When the swarm learned to counter those, we developed others. We cycled through 17 different combat doctrines in 6 hours. The footage showed something that made even the most hardened council warriors flinch. Human soldiers, their ships, destroyed, floating in spacesuits and continuing to fight with hand weapons against creatures the size of buildings. Not retreating, not surrendering, fighting with the desperate fury of beings who refuse to accept extinction. But the turning point, Elsa continued, came when Captain Sarah Morrison's task force implemented Protocol Omega. The hologram displayed the final phase of the battle. A single human dreadnought, its hull breached in dozens of places, limping toward the swarm's central nexus. Instead of weapons, it was broadcasting on all frequencies. She was transmitting our military history, Helen explained. Every war we've ever fought, every impossible battle we've won, every time we've faced extinction and survived through sheer bloody-minded refusal to die quietly. The swarm had tried to process this data, to understand and adapt to human tactics. Instead, they had encountered something beyond their comprehension, the accumulated fury and determination of a species that had clawed its way to the top of an evolutionary ladder soaked in blood. The swarm's collective intelligence experienced what we call a logic cascade failure, Elsa said with grim satisfaction. They literally couldn't process the concept of a species that becomes more dangerous when cornered. Their hive mind shut, down trying to compute our behavioral patterns. The hologram showed the moment when the void swarm simply stopped. Millions of biomechanical nightmares floating dead in space, their collective consciousness overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of human persistence. The council chamber remained silent for long moments. Finally, Vexthera spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. The Outer Rim territories, they're secure? Completely, Helen confirmed. We're currently reverse engineering swarm technology to bolster galactic defenses. Consider it our membership application. Councillor Vexithara's serpentine form seemed to deflate. The council may have been hasty in its previous assessments. Elsa smiled, an expression that somehow contained both warmth and the promise of violence. Oh, Councillor, you haven't seen hasty yet. Would you like to discuss humanity's application for membership? Or shall we return to our defensive positions and wait for the next impossible threat to emerge? The vote was unanimous. As they left the chamber, Helen murmured to her companion, "Think they'll ever realize we were already in the system when the swarm attacked?" Elsa's smile widened. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Behind them, the Galactic Council began the complex process of welcoming Earth into galactic civilization, not as junior partners, but as the species other civilizations would call when the impossible needed to be made possible.